Hey everybody, excited for today's session. We are going to focus on the recently released Flux ControlNet capability, which integrates directly into the canvas. I do think it's important to call out that we are in the early stages of the Flux ecosystem. I think it's important to call that out simply because I think everything is going to continue to get better. We're going to play around with those today, and we are going to dive into using them on the canvas, as well as kind of switching between SDXL and Flux for kind of like working and creating with those models. Okay, so we're just going to jump into the canvas. I've got a couple of 3D models that we've pulled out of Sketchfab. I think that I will be able to call out the individual creators of these commons models just so that we can kind of like give credit where credit is due. But we've got kind of this like fantasy tavern, this fort, and then this kind of Gothic cathedral. And I think these are really pretty useful examples of very complicated, very like specific detail outputs where we're really going to put this to the test and see what it can do. As you all know, am a glutton for punishment. I love to have things go wrong and get challenged while I'm doing this. So today we're going in with these extremely hard images, and I have not tested any of these in Flux. So I don't know what we're getting into. I am going to be learning alongside you. But the whole point of these studio sessions is for me to share that journey because it's always fun to watch me suffer. So we're going to get started. I feel like I should probably just skip to the hardest one. My gut is that this Gothic cathedral is probably the most painful to get really perfect. But does the audience have one of these that they think is probably more interesting than the other? Are others in this list so that we can get started there? See some people typing. It's always fun. It's always fun. Someone said this one, this Gothic cathedral. We got a couple of other people typing. We'll see if the consensus is this, which is, it's my gut that this is going to be the hardest. Yep, cathedral. All right, we're doing it. Cathedral. Boom. Let's send the image to the canvas. One thing that I'll call out is that with the latest release candidate, we've made some updates on sending images to the canvas. It's already a controversial change. When you right click and hit new canvas from image, what it's going to do is very similar to how we used to fit the old image to image workflow where you put an image in and you just want to transform it. That's going to immediately push that into the right size or the optimized size for the model that you have selected. If you want it to be the full size image, you can right click and hit new layer from image, and that will bring that into the canvas just as easily without resizing. But if you want to have it resized automatically, hit new canvas from image, boom, bada bing, it's there. It's the perfect size. So that's what we're going to do here. I'm going to send it to canvas. And then I'm going to convert this to a control layer. And we are going to do depth. Now, I am going to try this with SDXL first, and then I'm going to switch to Flux, and we're going to see the differences between the two, because I think that's really what we want to compare. So we've got our depth anything. If I was really kind of picky, what I'd probably do is I'd probably duplicate this before I convert it to the filtered image. I'd duplicate it, and then I would do something like either Canny or Scribble, and I would get the edges from this as well. And so, you know, I'd have the edges, I'd also get the depth information, and then we'd have kind of a combination of the depth plus line and edge, and those two together would work really well on getting us an output. Maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll have that here. So we'll do that. I'll leave Scribble pretty high, and I will bring the depth down a little bit and have it maybe mostly affect the early generation to get the mass correct, and then rely on the Scribble ControlNet for some of those edges. So we're going to do that. I am going to do a photograph, a cathedral, Gothic architecture, dark stone, and gloomy, mysterious, foggy environment. We'll do that. We'll give that a shot. And we're just gonna go. We're just gonna give it a shot. Send it all the way. Take it out and see what we get. So this again is SDXL. We're just using this as a base to compare and kind of see what these settings give us for it. Looks like it kind of imagined a big behind it has a big cathedral as well. But it looks pretty cool. It's got like, I mean, it is extremely cool. Even though it imagined this cathedral behind it. I like it. It's very cool. So that's kind of what we're getting with SDXL. So I did that just as a comparison. We'll save this to the gallery just so we can bring that comparison in later, but I'm going to delete that out. And now I'm going to switch to Flux. We need to change our control layers here. Now there's a lot of Flux ControlNets out. We support them. They support both XLabs and Instant X ControlNets. The one that I'm going to use today is this Union ControlNet. And I'm mainly doing that because it's one of the better ones that I've found, but it also is one that I can actually use for both of these control layers. The Union ControlNets basically take whatever type you want to throw at it and kind of work as well as they can. There is an optimization that we can do where you expose like telling it what type it's using, but we found that like it's a minor optimization and this is much simpler. So I'm just going to use this for now and we'll see what we get. I'm going to leave it on the same settings and we're going to invoke and see what the exact same settings do for us with Flux as the base model. So the same control inputs, I guess. Now, obviously we can start an SDXL. We can, start with Flux. We can move from SDXL to Flux once we've generated. We can edit images. We can do all that kind of stuff. Right now, we're just looking at the initial raw control generation. And because I'm using two of these, looks like it's going to be pretty slow. Now, again, this is kind of where Controlnets give you a little bit of a challenge. They're pretty heavy. And I may end up cutting this off and just using one of these control nets. Now, why is this happening? I'm on a 24 gigabyte card. 24 gigabytes is not enough for the full Flux dev model. It is also apparently not enough for really having two control nets in it. So I'm gonna have to stop this. In our hosted product, we have 48 gigabytes of GPU. And so you can do two. It still takes a little bit longer because it's pretty heavy. But in this case, I think we're going to have to give up on that one and probably just do one of these. I'll just do the depth and we'll leave it at that. So I'm going to disable our line. Yeah, everyone's saying that they can hear my computer dying slowly under the strain of it. I think we're candidly very lucky that my stream is still going, although that may stop here momentarily. So now we're just doing the depth. I've disabled the canny on this, and so now it's reloading that with just the single control net, and it should move a little bit quicker. Although the fact that I tried to throw it it might be protesting under the memory load of that having been cached. It's possible that I may want to move to our hosted product. Might move a little bit quicker. We're gonna give this a shot though. We're gonna keep this going. I think we can get it there. although I'm now kind of like scared of what's happening in my computer. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna restart the back end momentarily. Never try to do 2 control nets. That's the lesson that we've learned here with Flux. RIP. All right, we're coming back up here momentarily. Like my computer just choked on it all. Yeah, streaming plus Flux Dev plus ControlNet plus recording everything, right? We're recording, just double checking that all the recording stuff's still going and that the computer hasn't imploded. Yeah, okay. We're alive. We're back. We got this. We're going to yeah. We're gonna try this again. So we got Flux Dev. I'm gonna cancel this, and I'm just gonna, like, for the avoidance of doubt, I will delete that layer out of my thing, and we're just gonna regenerate the depth. Even if 4090 can't protect you from Flux. Someone's asking, has anyone heard about if ControlNet quantization will be possible or not? I don't know. I've learned my lesson. I'm not gonna speculate. No speculation on this side. I won't say anything. I don't know. I'm sure that people will continue to innovate and come up with ways to use these tools. But my suggestion for people who can use Flux Dev but are unable to use Flux ControlNets would be to use SDXL to get a base image for control, and then do image to image on top of that. And we will go through that workflow. We will do that. We will kind of showcase what that can look like. I think it might be a little bit more efficient in many cases to do that anyways, because you can get a lot of the core rough iteration done and then kind of like bring that into Flux after the fact. But we are seeing some pretty cool results here from Flux on the ControlNet. So it is nice. Someone asked if I could show the results with both activated, say tomorrow or whatever. I think on my computer with both, it might be like closer towards the heat death of the universe. But what I can do is we can run it on our hosted product that has the higher GPU, and then showcase like what that looks like. Maybe Glimmer, if you can take a note for us to do that, maybe in the recording after this, we'll have that. So this is what our depth ControlNet looks like with the ControlNet union in Flux. Pretty cool, right? Like, I mean, the just overall quality, this is awesome. It's got like a very cool aesthetic. It's interpreted like the bottom as water. Yeah, somebody said, can't go to this one, can't swim. We could probably make a path for ourselves if we wanted to, but yeah, this is pretty cool. And we can compare, you know, what this looked like to our original. I'd say for the most part, well, that's not true. There's definitely some things that it did not pick up. It picked up all of the front. It didn't pick up all of these side. Dropping the word there, but you know what I mean. These little like tower things. I think it starts with P. Didn't pick those up, and it might be because we brought the end step down so much, so we might try bringing that back up, just so that it's there for a little bit longer, and we'll give ourselves, I'm going to hide that raster layer so that we get a completely new generation, and we'll just do another one. Steeple, Spire, both of those sound reasonable. So someone's gonna probably like come up with some perfect word for it. They're gonna know the architectural term. I'm confident of that. When we turn up the weight, the thing that we're seeing now is because this model is kind of like on an empty stage, if you will, the depth is actually picking that up as well. If you're bringing something out of a Blender or 3D S Max or Maya or anything that is like Revit, whatever it is that you're bringing it out of, it is best if you can bring it out in a scene rather than in an isolated kind of like empty area, because the empty area will also come with that. But you can always, fix that up after the fact. So if we compare this, it's definitely got more of the information in it. I think the quality of the image is also just a little bit less as a result of that. Oh, nice. I think Glimmer shared the results of both of those in the chat, and we'll include that maybe somehow in the recording after the fact, but running both of those control nets on the hosted product. Actually, I'll bring this in. I can open this in the browser. This is what Glimmer did on the hosted product. You can see that with this, you get a lot of the finer details because you're able to combine the control nets together. You get a little bit more of like the intricate details and texture than what we got inside of our generation with just one. Even with the other one here where it came up with its own thing. If we save this out and we compare this, actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to copy this. I'm going to bring it in to Invoke. I'm just kind of bring this in and compare it side by side. So we've got those, and then what I'll do is add this in as a raster layer as well, and we can just see all of these on the canvas. So I think if you look at this and this, obviously the one that had both control nets on it is much more high fidelity and kind of the true to the original. There's still some pieces that are a little bit off, so we don't have to go through and kind of like nitpick it, but for the sake of like just showing where it is different. On this piece right here, you can see some lines. That is kind of missing from this. You've got this kind of these windows over here. This element right here, which is this kind of like front, maybe stained glass thing, is gone. And I mean, I would say that this is probably a little bit more of a traditional kind of look for a Gothic architecture. It's very in line. So Flux has kind of brought that in and injected it in. But if we're talking about like fidelity to the original, there's definitely a little bit of like, shape loss in some of this. But overall, I think it's a really great representation and certainly offers a little bit more close mapping to the structure on the back end and things like that. It's just it's a different image. So let me see if I've got questions. Yeah, the comparison feature in Invoke works well if they are the exact same image size. These are different image sizes. This one is a little bit wider and this one's a little bit more. But I've got an idea. Let's do this. We're all going to learn. We're all going to learn here. Using the bounding box, we can easily take some snips out. So I can save the canvas to the gallery. I can save the bounding box to the gallery. And so I'll save this bounding box here to the gallery. And it's not going to be the exact same. It's still the same problem, but we're saving those both to the gallery. And now I can double click on this and compare. And, we've got a reasonable compare without distortion, but it's not like overlapped comparison. But you get the idea. It's cool. All right, I'm going to exit this comparison. Someone said would like an HDR depth image with much deeper details. I think you and everybody else on the planet. That is called monocular depth estimation, which is where you get the depth information. There's actually a new research paper that just came out called Lotus that is kind of looks like it's might be state of the art for the depth image. It's pretty good, but none of the control layer models are trained to use that level of information. They're all kind of a little bit like they're trained on worse depth estimators. Over time, I anticipate that we will see control models trained on like really high fidelity depth information, and then that will be very powerful. So now that we've got this one done, I guess the question is, what do we want to do with it now? I'm going to delete out these layers that I added. Boom, boom. Go back to our working area over here. And I think what I want to do now is maybe 20 minutes in, do we want to switch? We want to switch to a different thing? Let's do a diff. Okay, that's what somebody said. Let's do a different one. So I'm going to reset the canvas. We're going to go to our gallery. Maybe we'll do this tavern. Yeah, we'll do this tavern. I'm going to send this to the canvas. Now we've got a layer that's perfectly sized for our process, and we are going to duplicate it. And what I'm going to do first here, since we don't want to completely implode my computer, I'm going to convert these both to control layers, and then I'm going to switch to SDXL, and we'll do depth and Scribble depth. Oh, yeah, we'll accept that. And then we'll do Scribble. Lowering the threshold to get a little bit more detail in here. Just want to get those tables. Looks good to me. And then we're going to mess with our settings here. I'm going to bring this down. Depth information. Well, we'll keep the depth somewhat high, but end early. And then we'll keep the Scribble mostly high throughout. And this is going to be a fantasy tavern, quaint village, not gloomy, cheery, fantasy, aesthetic, we'll see. We'll see. We're going to do maybe fantasy concept art and see what we get. Just to get a different style in, you know, get something else, get a feel for it. I have a feeling I'm going to want to do some regional guidance, but let's see what we get when we do this, and we'll determine how we want to do it there. Someone said, in architecture, a great new workflow is importing a big architectural screenshot, switching to manual to make the image in the right size, and afterwards refining the details with the big ControlNet. This way, you can get much bigger details, much better details. Very cool. Someone said, from these 3D images, what would you recommend in how to train a LoRa for UV LoRa purposes? I think that is going to be a very different conversation. So I won't go too deep on that, but I know that there are a lot of people who are looking at custom LoRa's and things like that for gaming. I think it's training that is going to be like a big tangent. Are you crunching the Scribble and depth maps into one image for Flux? I missed the start. No, we were. Well, when I tried to do it, it didn't work out very well on my local machine. But Glimmer showed a result from our hosted product of what happens when you run with two, because you just need a lot more GPU power to do that. You use two different control layers that are separated, and that's why it has more overhead for the models, because they are separate instances of the model that are both being run at the same time. Yeah, okay. I think I got through all the questions. Cool. So we've got our fantasy tavern, a little bit off with some of the details, but I don't think it's too bad. I'm tempted to keep it. Yeah, I'm going to keep it. Okay. Where did it go wrong? What's wrong with it? Well, I'm going to hide the depth ControlNet for a second, just so I can look at this. Actually, I want to bring that back. Okay, so the raster layer, I think I want to make this an interior hallway rather than a window, right? So I want to kind of draw that out. And then I'll get this wood color up here on the top and just kind of make that window. And maybe, we do some opacity and stuff so that there's like some noise on the inside that it like tries to figure out, but we don't want it to be a window as much as we can. So try to emphasize the sides here. That door, this regional guidance can help with that as well. Just color in some of these areas where I see some weirdness. For the most part, I mean, it's pretty decent. It's not too shabby. Now the question is like, okay, well, now we've got like this empty background. How would we make this a better village? And I think the answer to that is we'll first do some, I'm just going to do a general image to image, and I'm going to leave the depth off for now, and I'm going to see what we get with just a raw image to image here. Okay, we're getting a little bit more of that village in the background. I like the details on this a little better, simply because it's not as constrained by the depth information, and we're starting to get a little bit of the background in play here. Now, what I probably would do here to kind of extend this, since this is kind of like in isolation, is I might just go in. Oh, I was thinking about like, I don't want to get this in too much into like drawing on the control layer, because I think that's like maybe not what we're focused on this time around. But what we can do is we can go through and just kind of block in some color on the side for other buildings. And so, you know, we might go in and take some of this green and kind of continue that out this way. And maybe we want that to be just kind of all of this is grass. And then we want some buildings on the side. And so, you know, try to like rough in a building over here. Just gonna do that. And give it some like depths over there. And maybe I'll do that and see what we got. Oh, we got more over here that we need to get. Want to go off into nothingness. Okay. And then what I might do is just add in some dark kind of like vertical lines to separate out some of these buildings. Try to like just give it some depth information to work off. This is going to be a relatively high denoising strength, so we're going to be okay on that front. Just want to try to give it that. And then something that can give, I mean, typically when you're doing an image to image, it's going to try to figure out what it's looking at. So if we give it like a dirt road, maybe. So I'll just draw this in and put this on the corner. Now I know that I'm going to want to do some regional guidance. I'm going to say like a dirt road, dirt village road, and I'm going to do that here. And we're going to say this is the tavern here. And we're going to do buildings over on the side. And maybe I'll even do buildings over here too. And so it's just like village buildings. Yeah, we'll just give it a shot. We'll see what we got. We'll see what we get. We're just gonna give it we're gonna give it a chance to imagine this in a scene. We still have our control layer in place, so it's keeping the tavern the same. The buildings look somewhat awkward. I'm gonna like increase the denoising strength. I think the other piece we might do is do some inpainting around it rather than keeping it as is. I don't love that. I don't love that. I'm going to bring this back down. Just kind of toying with the denoising strength here to see like at what point we get some updates without it losing a lot of the information that we get to have. Okay, I'm going to leave this. I'm going to accept this. Now, one thing that I'm like realizing is I didn't inpaint this, right? And so this tavern got a little bit updated as well, and we might not like that. So I'm going to go in and erase some of the layer that was added in back down to where we were before, just so that I get that fully bought back in, like this old generation. And then something that I can do now, I'm going to delete our old depth information. I'm going to right click and add new control layer. What that's going to do is it's going to bring in everything that I've got here as a new control layer that I can then format for depth purposes. And so I'll be able to format this for depth. And now I've got the depth information that has been created in the diffusion process. And so I can use this now to help guide it, even though we're, not really, we got that in the original depth map. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn off the Scribble ControlNet. We're just going to use the depth. And then I'm going to inpaint on these areas over on the side here. And this will give me the ability to go in and do a little bit of editing around these sides and regenerate it. See fit. Go all the way. Why are there white lines in the boundaries of the depth image? That comes out of the depth anything processor, and that's more so a visual cue for the edge of that, where the edge of the depth information goes to black. We're going to do that at 0.65. You know what? This is at depth of 1 or strength of 1. We don't want it at strength of 1. We want to bring this down. I'm going to keep it real loose at like 0.4 so it can kind of change the shape of the building. And that's going to help us with just giving it a little bit more freedom to imagine this like village and city. So that's there. We're going to do another pass and work on this a little bit more. I might even decrease this control even further to 0.15. That's too much, because now it's not even a building. So we're going to bring that back up to 0.25. There we go. That's what I was hoping for. All right. So now that I've brought that up, the way to think about this with a depth map is I'm going to turn off these layers so we can really see this depth map. This, even though it's definitely not the shape of what we just created, it is kind of like a mass. It's a block. It's kind of like something's here, right? At low depth controls, like at a 0.25, you're basically saying there's going to be something here roughly in this spot, but it's got a lot of freedom to make the shape of it different, do a lot of different things. If we have that at really high strength, that's where we get where it looks like almost like a square-ish brutal building, right? It's got like the edges are hard and it's like a mass that way. When we decrease it, we're actually giving it a lot more freedom. And so when we have our raster layers enabled, we'll hide this, we can see that it brought in a little bit more of this kind of like villagey look. And that's kind of what I was going for. I wanted to get a little bit of that village picked up. We've got our dirt road. We have our tavern on the corner. It continues down into this kind of like rest of the village Maybe this is like the graveyard for the city over here on the left. And, we've done, I would say, a lot of building this out from this initial 3D piece. People asked about the white lines. We talked about the white lines. What is the difference between an in-paint mask and regional guidance? Okay. Regional guidance is telling the system about the picture. It's telling it where are certain things. It's helping guide the control of the prompt. If you don't have an in-paint mask, let's do a generation without it, right? I'm going to turn it off. If you don't have an in-paint mask, you're doing image to image on the entire picture. Everything changes. What in-paint mask does is it specifies where do we want the regeneration to happen. So in this case, we regenerated the whole picture. I'm going to turn this back on, which is our in-paint mask. And we'll see during the denoising process, this part's going to be the same, right? This part's the same the entire time. The only thing that's changing is our in-paint mask. That's the difference, is that in-paint mask is controlling where does regeneration happen. Regional guidance is just informing it about the image and where things are. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the in-paint mask or part of the change. It's helping guide that attention. So hopefully that helps explain it a little bit more. So I'm going to delete that one because I like our current image here. I think this is kind of cool. Now the question is, I just had a fun idea. I think I'm going to do my fun idea because why not? This is what life's all about. So I am going to move this over, and we are going to merge our raster layers here. And I'm going to see my controls. I'm going to go in, erase some of this stuff out. And I am going to leave the controls off. Probably just delete them out. I don't need them anymore. What I'm going to do is a fantasy tavern next to a spooky graveyard, right? Maybe somebody's going to guess where I'm going here, why it's going to be fun, but we're going to do this. When you're doing this kind of outpainting, you have two options. One is to let the system guess the colors. That's going to guess the color based on your infill selection down here. By default, a lot of people have patch match. Any of these options is good. Llama is kind of the default for a lot of people as well. What it's going to do is it's going to fill in the colors of the image and do the regeneration on top of that. Typically, you want your denoising strength to be relatively high when you have transparency in your image. If we generate right now, by default, when there's transparent pixels, it treats that like an in-painting mask. So if you want to visualize what's going to happen right now, it's kind of like all of this is selected. And that's kind of what having transparency is going to do. If I generate and also have some in-painting mask on the edge, it's going to kind of like blend those areas in as well. So I can kind of like do this if I want to, and it'll blend all of those areas. But what it's going to do is it's going to guess the color underneath and then kind of like create that. So now I'm going to add regional guidance over here, and I'm going to do my spooky, eerie, strange graveyard. And we're going to put that over here on the left-hand side. And we're going to generate this and see what we get. And we're going to iterate from here. I'm just going to move quickly. I'm not going to worry too much. We're going to iterate towards what I'm going for, but it's going to be fun. I'm going to add some cool stuff to this. So I'm expanding out. We're going to add some content to this. I imagine I'm going to want to do some in-painting as well. This is going to get expanded again soon. Okay. It went like straight Halloween. It went straight Halloween over here. Not what I was going for, but it does. I understand what it was thinking. How do I want to control this? I think what I'm going to do is, probably delete this, but I'm going to add a control layer, and I'm going to do Scribble, and we're going to keep this relatively light. And on this Scribble layer, I'm going to draw what I was hoping to see, which is a little bit more like this, with some like, you know, tombstones. Kind of more what I was thinking of there, is like it's going over to this side. I'm going to bring this Scribble down because that's a terrible sketch. But mainly just trying to like guide the structure over there. It could work, it may not. Still wants to do a tree for whatever reason. No, I don't want that tree. I'm going to add a negative prompt to all of that. I'm going to say no tree. Don't want a tree. Don't put a tree there. Somebody said, get drunk in the tavern, you walk and sleep in the cemetery, and you save on hospital bills. Okay, there we go. That's what I was kind of hoping for. I wanted it to be like a little bit more of like, yeah, it's like right there on the edge of the city. There's a bunch of tombstones. Okay. I'm not going to get too persnickety about each of the tombstones. It's going to work great. Man, Glimmer is just really going out after it. I think he's using Flux. He's sharing all of these like Flux generations in here. We are going to, now that we've got that Scribble out of the way and we've kind of expanded it, I'm going to drag our cathedral in here, and we're going to add this in, and that's kind of what I was going to do. That's my fun idea. Taste that. That's my fun idea. Shift T is a hotkey for transform. It's not Control T because that is a browser hotkey, and we don't want to mess with that. But we're going to move this over here. We can actually keep this like more true to size. I bet it wouldn't be as small as the tavern, right? So we want this to be a little bit bigger over here on the left-hand side. And something like that is good. And then I'm going to do a Scribble. We get some edges here. I may do line art edge detection, but it's a little bit looser. Yeah, we like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this over here and have a, do a little bit of inpainting here. So it's got some freedom to like intersect this. And then I'm going to say a cathedral next to a spooky graveyard. Cheery fantasy aesthetic. I'll loosen this up a little bit. Doesn't need to be perfect. And we'll generate that. What it's going to try to do is it's going to try to bring these things in together. Now, whether the perspective is fully right or not, we'll see how it looks after the fact. Could be a little bit off, but you know, we're playing around here, obviously. And if you were really doing this, you'd probably get some like 3D perspectival skew stuff in the process and make that all good. Now we got our cathedral over on the left side of the city. It's so spooky. It's connected. Perspective's a little bit off. But we've got some bats in there, and some bats got added in because it's a spooky cathedral. So now we've got that in, and it's kind of like over on the side. So, you know, it's fun to kind of play around. We even got some like Halloween stuff down here with some spooky pumpkins. I'll turn off our regional guidance and our in-paint mask and our control layers, and we can look at some majestic scene that we've kind of created for ourselves in this fantasy setting. It's fun. It's neat. Yeah, the cathedral does look a little bit off. I think it's perspectively needs to be shifted down a little bit so that it's a little bit flatter. It's kind of like up a little bit. But again, like I said, so just to kind of showcase how you could theoretically connect different parts and pieces and use different control layers to kind of bring those in. What am I gonna do now? I think we've got some time to play around with this. I'm very tempted to do like a loose flux transformation on this. Does that sound like a reasonable idea? Does it sound insanity? Probably insanity only because it's like very wide and it might be a little bit too heavy to do. So I'm tempted. All right, if it blows up the stream, it's my fault. I did it. It's my fault. Unity Flux stuff. I'm going to turn inpaint off. Regional guidance is off. Do I want any control? Yeah, I'm going to turn ControlNet off too. I'm just going to do a little bit of like a little bit of light. Tavern in a quaint village to the right. Let's see what we get. I don't think this is going to be a great idea because I don't think Flux doesn't really like this style very much. But we're going to try. Somebody said you could downscale the image to a reasonable size for Flux. It makes too much sense not to do. So I'm gonna downscale. I'm gonna right click. I'm gonna transform. I'm gonna fit this. Oh man, I need to merge the layers here. Merge our layers. I'm gonna transform. Fit to bounding box. That work? No, it didn't work. Transform. Fit mode. Fit to bounding box. Need to fill it. There we go. Filling it. All right. The risk of my computer exploding just went down to 0. It's great. Good suggestion. Thank you for your creativity, chat. This was way too high denoising strength. So we're going to turn that down. I'm going to turn this up to 0.1. I do think this is probably worth explaining. With Flux, there's an optimized image to image, which is kind of a more tuned image to image process. The way that works is normally if you have this off, or if you're using image to image with Flux and other tools, basically you get no change for most of the scale, and then the end is where all the change is. We kind of spread that out, but it does mean that the denoising strength, you want to bring it a lot lower if you don't want it to change too much when that is on. So we're going to bring that down to 0.1 instead. Now Flux is like reinterpreting this image and giving us our concept art fantasy glitch. So, definitely loses a little bit of that painterly charm. Again, I think this comes back to training. I'm not using any Lauras or anything like that for more aesthetic style. What I could try to do is turn this into a more photographic type look, although I think it might need a lot of change to do that. So I'll try that with photography and see what we get. It's going to still be relatively, I have a feeling it's going to still want to stick around this kind of like aesthetic, simply because it's already baked into the image. It's already got like so much of this style that's implied in the image and the way it's structured. Yeah, so somebody called out, Flux is a very different prompt style, and the prompt seems to be way more influential even when doing image to image. So we've got photography and all that kind of stuff in it, but it's not really applying that here. What I wonder is, let's take that away. Let's convert this to a control layer. Let's see what this does when we are on a just canny edge detection, or maybe do depth. What do you think? Depth? Ooh, look at that depth map. That's pretty cool. I like that. We're going to try that there. So now that it doesn't have any of the raster information, it's purely looking at the position of all this stuff. We're going to try that out. I'm going to bring down the strength as well to about 40, like bring down the instep to about 40% so that it has a little bit more flexibility. That's definitely, because it doesn't have any of that color in it, it's able to like, okay, I know what a real photo looks like. And it kind of looks pretty cool too. Colors are coming in. It's an interesting aesthetic here. Someone said Canny for me has been most successful in Flux so far. That makes some sense. It's getting there. Okay, so definitely need some work and details here, but we definitely got a lot of like that depth out of it, which is interesting. Let's save that off the gallery so we can peek at that while it's generating the other one. So we open this up in a new tab. Where it did well is general aesthetic and color. Where it did poorly is a lot of the detail. And I think this is because the strength was at 1 for this. So somebody said it's giving Diablo. It sure is giving Diablo. It's given a lot of Diablo. But the details are a little bit weak. And I think that comes from the nature of the depth ControlNet being at 1. So it's really tightly constrained to this. I think in our generation that's happening right now, way too little. Something wrong has happened here because that's not enough at all. So we're going to bring this back up. And we're going to generate another one because that one is not enough at all. Not enough strength, anywhere close to enough strength. This one definitely does. The thing that we're trying to do is we're trying to get the core mass of the image to get generated while giving enough flexibility and freedom to the model so that it can kind of get some of the smaller details filled in. And this is definitely kind of like it is a tuning process for each of your workflows. If you've got a certain style or a certain aesthetic or a certain outcome that you're going for, there isn't a standard way to do it. You really have to kind of like toy with it and figure out what is going to work best for you. In this case, I think this is better than the first one. Like, I like the aesthetic of this one, but this looks a little bit cleaner. Some of the details still has a little bit of wonkiness, but I think it's generally cleaner. So I'm going to accept that one. And then maybe if we turn this down, we can get this to like regenerate itself with a little bit more detail. No control at this point. I'm just regenerating as is and letting it fill in the details. This like double effect with a low denoising strength, I think we'll get a lot more of the freedom that I'm looking for in some of the details. So we look before and after. Somewhat of the way there. Still kind of debatable whether it really pulled in a whole lot of detail, but you know, it's working its way towards that. We probably want to tweak the prompt here as well. A wide angle cinematic photograph of a fantasy cathedral next to a spooky graveyard. Tavern, wide cathedral, the dynamic lighting of the scene. It brings a rich and ethereal quality to this small town on the eastern coast of Ireland. I'm just adding nonsense at this point. And we'll see what we get if we pop this up to 0.14. And again, I added all of that because when you're using Flux, you do want a longer prompt. It's not quite as good as short prompts. It wants a little bit more richness. It wants you to kind of like tell it what to put down. It's not so much going to assume anything. And so the more you put in, the more you get out, as with many things in life. I don't know that I got a whole lot more out of that, but you know, it's got the IKEA effect a little bit, right? I tried. I mean, I think some of the details are getting there, but I think we're probably gonna have to go up a little bit more. My fear is just going too high and losing everything in the image. Like we didn't really keep any of our tombstones, which may be a function of like just using the original image as a canny and trying the canny. Somebody suggested that. Maybe that's what we do next. It's like starting to get there. Let's do convert this one to a control layer. The canny on this that has the it's got all the tombstones in it. And I'm gonna give it a lot of freedom here. Let it go wild. Let's see if we can get closer to that spooky aesthetic we're going for here. Like iterate. I'm trying to remember even where we started. I think we started from this like very fantasy-esque painting, and now we've like transferred to this interesting photographic style, semi-photographic style. Okay, it's like it's slowly getting there, right? And like it's kind of like maybe 2010 Unreal Engine type look. So then we'll accept that. For all intents and purposes, we could keep like playing around with this all day. I think somebody brought up like, is this a function of not having cemeteries next to taverns generally? Yeah, somebody, I think it was Glimmer did this one. Glimmer, take the control layer off screenshot and I'll pull it up. I think we've got some fun. Maybe this is like a fun exercise we should do in the future, but like provide the control images out so that people can play with it while we're doing it. But I think Glimmer's been taking the control images and playing around with this. Somebody wants me to do, I can't think of what this image is, surprise me. I doubt it's going to do anything good, but for the sake of fun and because we only have 2 minutes left, we'll do it. Boom. Control layer out of here. We're just going to let it do its thing. I can't think of what this image is. Surprise me. I don't think this is how it works. For what it's worth. It's going to come up with something. It's not going to be good. I'll also notice that if you don't have a whole lot of stuff in your prompt, you can actually sometimes get that grid, the grid look. Looks like we're like at a farm now. Cabins in the woods. I agree. I think that's what we're looking at now. Someone said, I'm surprised. I'm surprised. It generates photos. Look at that. We're now cabin in the woods and a nice little like black forestish background. Let's see what happens when we say, I can't think of what this image is. Surprise me at a lower strength so that we don't lose any of our city or much of our city and let it kind of figure out what that is on its own. It's going to be kind of funny if I can't think of what this image is, surprise me, ends up producing a better photographed result than our actual prompt. That'll be amusing. I don't even know what this is. These are like trash cans on wheels in the city. This is a swarm of trash can animals that's taken over the city. I still think it has a lot of this kind of like very 3D-ish effect. I think that probably is mostly a function of this layout not being something that's sort of particularly well photographed. I don't know. There's still some like mysteries in using Flux on some of this. Really weird cannons. Looks like piles of cannonballs. Maybe I'm getting like very strange cannons. Maybe this is like I think it's like some Civil War enactment or something like that. But I think we've kind of gotten what we intended to, in the fact that we watched the struggle happen and we went through the journey of playing around with it. That is, I think, ultimately what we were all looking for. For the sake of this, though, I'm going to leave it at this very nice photograph because this looks very peaceful. Like it's nice Sunday morning. If I walked out, just like cool air, this wouldn't be a bad place to wake up. So I'm going to leave that photo, maybe upscale it and make it my background on my desktop. Let's go back through and review. We had that one. Oh, you know what? I think we lost my fantasy one. What we're going to have to do, I'm going to save this, and then we're going to see how far the undo history goes. Pretty far. Pretty far. Almost lost that one. We almost lost that one, but we did not lose that one. So I'm going to save that one out so we don't lose it. And then we can compare the compare functionality. Look at that. That's super cool. Such good functionality there. True, it would be in the intermediates folder. Someone said we've got to work on an undo function for real life. If only. Okay, well, that is time for us today. Hopefully you got something out of seeing how Flux's Controlnets work, and also started planning for your new computer that will actually run it with multiple Controlnets, because it's going to be pretty taxing. Yeah, it's a fun new tool in the toolkit. There's a lot still left to kind of figure out on tuning all of this and kind of getting it perfected. But we'll continue to do that live and more studio sessions in the future. So we'll see you all. Have a good one next time.